Welcome to Primitive Advice. I'm glad you're here because today's conversation might just change the way you see yourself and how others see you. Here's the thing, truly intelligent men, they've got a secret. It's not about having all the answers or knowing the capital of every country. Their real power is in knowing when to keep their mouth shut. Sometimes, what you don't say says more about you than any clever quote ever could. I've spent years studying people, both through the lens of ancient Stoic wisdom and by sipping too many coffees while watching human nature unfold in real time. And let me tell you, the wisest men I've known have something in common. They don't waste words. They don't rush to fill silence. And they never say things that chip away at their credibility. So today we're diving into 7 things intelligent men never say. Not because they're flawless, but because they've learned, sometimes the hard way, that these phrases lead nowhere good. Stick around, hit that subscribe button, and let's get wiser together. 1. I already know that. There's a phrase that slips out more often than we'd like to admit. I already know that. It sounds harmless, even confident. But what it really reveals is something far less flattering. A closed mind. And an intelligent man knows better. He knows that the moment we convince ourselves there's nothing more to learn, we've slammed the door on growth. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, I was working with a mentor, a man who carried himself with the quiet certainty of someone who had lived through enough battles to speak sparingly. We were reviewing a process I had done 100 times before. He began explaining something about it, and without thinking, I cut him off with, "Yeah, I know that already." He gave me a look, calm but heavy, and moved on. Later that evening, I realized what I had done, not just interrupted him, but robbed myself of the chance to hear what he saw that I didn't. His years of experience had taught him things that didn't come printed in manuals or outlined in training videos. Things I hadn't lived long enough to understand. When we say, "I already know that," what we're really saying is, "I have nothing left to learn." That's not intelligence. That's arrogance dressed in the costume of competence. And Stoic philosophy cuts right through that illusion. Marcus Aurelius warned us plainly, "You cannot learn anything when you think you already know everything." What he meant was that the ego, our need to seem knowledgeable, to protect the image we've built, becomes the very thing that blocks our growth. It convinces us we're standing on solid ground when we're really balancing on pride. Intelligent men understand that knowledge is not a trophy you win and place on a shelf. It's a river, always moving, always changing. You step in the same place twice, and the water is different each time. I once watched a seasoned carpenter listen patiently to an apprentice explaining a technique he had likely mastered decades before. He nodded, asked questions, even thanked him for sharing. Later, I asked him why he didn't just tell the kid he knew all that already. He smiled and said, "Because sometimes you learn more by listening to the way someone else sees it." That's wisdom, and it's a kind of intelligence that doesn't need to broadcast itself. So if you catch yourself thinking, "I've heard this before," take a breath. Listen, anyway. Not because you need to humor someone, but because you might catch something new. A detail, a shift in perspective, a nuance that deepens your understanding. And even if you don't, you practice humility, you show respect, and over time, that makes you someone worth listening to. In Stoicism, we call that mastery of the self, the ability to set aside pride in favor of clarity, the strength to be a student of life, always. And in the end, that's the kind of intelligence that outlasts all the rest. 2. That's impossible. Several years ago, I worked alongside a man named Robert. He was sharp, experienced, the kind of leader who seemed to carry the weight of the entire company on his shoulders without ever showing strain. But there was one phrase he used often, almost like a reflex: that's impossible. Anytime a new idea surfaced, whether it was a proposal to enter a different market, streamline an outdated system, or even approach a difficult client, he dismissed it with those two words. At first, it sounded practical, responsible even. After all, who has time to waste chasing pipe dreams? But over time, something became painfully clear. Every time he said, "That's impossible," it wasn't the situation he was describing. It was himself, his own limits, his own fear. The Stoics understood this kind of thinking well. Seneca wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality, and that's exactly what Robert was doing. He wasn't analyzing a situation. There were conversations I postponed because I didn't want to deal with discomfort. Letters I didn't write because I thought there'd be time. But when I finally stopped waiting and acted, something powerful happened. The weight lifted. Clarity replaced regret. And I realized that action, not intention, is what builds a life worth remembering. The Stoics teach us to live now fully and with urgency. Later is an illusion that comforts us until it's too late. The man who acts today, who refuses to leave the important things undone, lives without regret. And that is true wisdom. Because opportunity doesn't knock twice. It fades quietly while we're busy waiting for a better time. 7. That's just how I am. One of the most limiting beliefs a man can hold on to is summed up in the phrase, "That's just how I am." It sounds definitive, like a full stop at the end of a sentence. But what it really signals is a quiet surrender, a decision to stop growing. Intelligent men avoid this mindset because they understand a truth that many ignore. We are not fixed beings, trapped by old habits or past identities. Who we are is shaped by what we choose to do, over and over again. The moment a man declares himself incapable of change, he isn't defining his nature, he's refusing responsibility for it. I've seen this play out too many times. A man loses his temper often, and when called out, he shrugs and says, "That's just how I am." Another man avoids meaningful connection because he's uncomfortable with vulnerability and tells himself, "That's just who I've always been." These aren't statements of fact. They're excuses. Excuses that allow fear and inertia to masquerade as self-awareness. But deep down, what they reveal is resistance. The resistance to discomfort, to the difficult process of change, and to the reality that no man is finished becoming who he's meant to be. The Stoics confronted this head-on. They taught that we are not prisoners of our temperament, our past, or our impulses. Epictetus said that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Likewise, it's not our nature that limits us. It's the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. Change is uncomfortable. It requires self-examination and a willingness to let go of the familiar, even when that familiarity has become a source of pain. But the Stoics also believed that self-mastery was the highest calling, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary for a life of meaning. Growth demands honesty. It demands that we ask harder questions. Am I acting this way because it's truly who I am, or because it's easier than doing the work to change? Intelligent men choose the harder path. They recognize that wisdom isn't a trophy you earn and then display. It's a practice, a commitment to becoming a better version of yourself every day. Not because you hate who you are now, but because you respect yourself enough not to stay the same. In the end, that's just how I am is a way of closing the door on possibility. But the Stoics remind us that life itself is change. Nature is change. To resist it is to deny the very essence of being alive. The man who understands this doesn't fear change. He welcomes it. He sees himself as a work in progress, unfinished, but willing. And in that willingness lies true wisdom. If you've ever caught yourself saying one of these 7 things, trust me, you're in good company. I've been there too, more times than I'd like to admit. But here's the good news. Intelligent men aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who recognize them and choose to do better. And that's exactly what we're doing here. Becoming better. One thoughtful choice at a time. So which one hit home for you today? Maybe it's time to leave. That's just how I am in the past. Or finally retire. I'll do it later, before later becomes never. Whatever it is, this is your invitation to take the next step. Because wisdom isn't about being perfect. It's about staying curious, staying humble, and always moving forward. If today's conversation sparked something in you, pass it on. Share this video with a friend who's walking this same path. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. See you to the next video.